Have you ever stopped to think that behind a simple Roman helmet there could be a secret that no one has ever told? Imagine Roman soldiers in their shiny armor marching with feathers on their heads. But were these feathers just for decoration, or were they hiding something much darker, something that could change the fate of an entire empire? Well, these feathers weren't just for show. They carried mysteries that the Romans, no matter how much they tried, couldn't hide. And today, we're going to find out what really happened behind this story. Get ready, because what you're about to hear may be scarier than you imagine. Stay tuned, secrets are about to be revealed. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, take advantage now to be part of our community. Every interaction you make makes this space more special. Origin and symbolism of feathers on Roman helmets. Since the beginnings of Roman civilization, symbols have been a powerful tool for conveying messages. Among all the elements that adorned Roman warriors, helmet feathers held a special place. These plumes, much more than simple decorations, carried profound meanings, reflecting the social position, courage, and identity of those who wore them. But what led a pragmatic and militarized people like the Romans to adopt this apparently delicate ornament? The answer begins with the very nature of feathers. For the Romans, they evoked ideas of elevation, superiority, and connection with the divine. Previous cultures, such as the Etruscans, had already used feather ornaments to distinguish leaders and elite warriors. Rome, always attentive to traditions that could strengthen its image of power, absorbed and reinterpreted this custom, transforming it into something even more sophisticated and functional. The feathers used in helmets varied in type and origin, but the most desired came from exotic birds, such as peacocks and pheasants. The peacock, for example, was associated with the goddess Juno, protector of Rome and symbol of majesty. The pheasant, with its bright colors, represented courage and vigor. A centurion or commander adorned with these feathers not only conveyed his importance, but also inspired his men, standing out from the crowd as a beacon of authority and inspiration. Furthermore, feathers helped to create a visual identity for the Roman legions. In an era when written words were not accessible to everyone and combat was chaotic, appearance was essential. A soldier who saw his commander's feathered helmet from afar knew immediately where to position himself. It was a form of order amidst the chaos, a visual language that connected men on the battlefield. Interestingly, the use of feathers also reflected the Romans' relationship with nature and the territories they conquered. Many of these exotic birds were brought from distant lands, such as Parthia, India, or Egypt. Having a helmet adorned with the feathers of a rare bird was almost like carrying a war trophy, a visual reminder of Roman victories over foreign peoples. A centurion marching through the streets of Rome with pheasant or peacock feathers on his helmet was not simply a soldier, he was a living emblem of Rome's expansion and world domination. Feathers also had a psychological impact on the Romans themselves. Some types of feathers were believed to carry magical or spiritual qualities. For example, peacock feathers, with eyes on their tails, were seen as protective against the evil eye. Warriors who wore them felt invulnerable, as if surrounded by a cloak of luck and divine protection. On the other hand, the use of feathers was strictly regulated. Not every soldier could adorn his helmet in this way. This prevented excess and ensured that feathers remained a privilege reserved for high-ranking officers. This exclusivity alone was a symbol of power. Imagine the impact of a Roman officer arriving at a camp or city, his helmet crowned with exotic feathers glistening in the sun. It was not only an imposing sight, but also a silent reminder of hierarchy and authority. This practice, however, was not limited to the battlefield. During triumphal ceremonies and parades, feathers took on an even more important role. A general returning victorious from a campaign would adorn himself in the most extravagant manner, often incorporating gilded or painted feathers to reinforce his connection to the gods and the glorious destiny of Rome. These moments were not just celebrations, they were carefully choreographed spectacles to impress the audience and perpetuate the aura of Roman invincibility. But not everything about feathers was purely practical or ceremonial. They also told personal stories. Many soldiers, especially those of high rank, chose feathers that represented something significant in their lives. A commander who had triumphed over Germanic tribes might opt for the feathers of local birds as a way to remember and display his successes. These details, invisible to many, had an emotional and personal weight that connected the warriors to their history. The cultural impact of feathers on Roman helmets went beyond the military. His image became an icon of Rome itself, appearing on sculptures, coins, and mosaics. Over the centuries, this aesthetic continued to influence not only military fashion, but also art and architecture. However, what makes this symbol even more fascinating is the way it reflects the balance between pragmatism and symbolism, two central features of the Roman mindset. The end of this story, however, is not just about what the feathers represented, but what they enabled the Romans to achieve. Plumed helmets were not just objects of adornment, they were instruments of power, communication, and inspiration. Behind each plume was a narrative of conquest, prestige, and identity that shaped Rome's perception of itself and the world it ruled. What do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments. It might inspire others. Types of feathers used on Roman helmets. The Romans, with their obsession for perfection and status, were not content with just any type of feather to adorn their helmets. Every detail was studied to highlight the position, prestige, and function of the warrior, transforming the simple addition of feathers into a true art of visual expression. More than just decorations, feathers indicated the hierarchies within the army, reflecting Roman society in its complexity. The most common feathers were undoubtedly those extracted from birds, as they offered a variety of colors and textures that could be used to create a wide range of helmet styles. Among these, the feathers of peacocks, pheasants, and even eagles stood out. These birds were not only symbols of beauty, but also of power and royalty. The plumage of the peacock, for example, was associated with the goddess Juno, whose relationship with Roman majesty and authority was evident in every military ceremony. In addition, peacock feathers were seen as a talisman of good luck, as they gave soldiers the belief that they were under divine protection during battle. The grandeur and symbolism of this feather was so great that a soldier with a helmet adorned with these feathers was not only a warrior, but a symbol of Rome itself. Another bird that played an important role in the choice of Roman feathers was the pheasant. Known for its brilliant plumage and vivid colors, the pheasant represented courage and fighting in its purest form. The addition of its feathers to a Roman soldier's helmet immediately communicated that he was not just a fighter, but someone with an indomitable and fearless character. Imagine the scene. A legion marching under the scorching sun, and suddenly in the distance you see the splendor of colorful feathers reflecting the light. It was like seeing the grandeur of Rome reflected, ready to conquer any challenge. However, the feathers of exotic birds were not exclusive to the highest-ranking soldiers. Hierarchy was everywhere in the Roman Empire, and this was also reflected in the feathers used. Horse feathers, for example, were most commonly associated with high officials, such as centurions and tribunes. Its sober color and the robustness of its plume referred to the strength and authority of those who commanded the legions. These plumes not only indicated the officer's status, but also functioned as a way to intimidate enemies. The presence of a centurion with horse feathers on his helmet meant that he was not a simple soldier, but an unbeatable commander, ready to lead his men with wisdom and strength. Artificial feathers, on the other hand, were more common among lower-ranking soldiers. Made from materials such as wool and silk, these feathers were not as impressive as those of birds, but they still played their role within the Roman military structure. They were a way to ensure that all soldiers had some kind of visual identity, even if they were not at the top of the hierarchy. These feathers were less durable and less impactful in terms of symbolism, but they gave soldiers a sense of belonging and unity, which was vital to the cohesion of the Roman army. During military campaigns, the use of penalties varied according to strategic needs. During parades or ceremonial moments, high-ranking soldiers could opt for more extravagant feathers with more layers or bright colors to create an even greater visual impact. The choice of penalties in this sense was also linked to the context. The more important the event or victory, the greater the penalties would be. A victorious commander returning from a campaign might adorn his helmet with a combination of rare feathers, often incorporating gold or even painted feathers, a clear reflection of his triumph and the prestige achieved by Rome. However, feathers were not just decorative. They also served much more pragmatic functions. In an era when communication on the battlefield depended heavily on visibility and speed of identification, feathers played a crucial role. They helped distinguish between different units and ranks of soldiers, especially on large and confusing battlefields. The commander wearing peacock feathers could be identified from a distance, which facilitated coordination during battles and ensured that orders were carried out correctly. This system of visual differentiation not only organized the army, but also created a very strong psychological presence. The glow of the feathers could be seen from afar, inspiring confidence in allies and at the same time intimidating enemies who could clearly see where the leaders were. However, contrary to what many think, the use of feathers was not limited to large battles. They were also present in moments of recreation and celebration, where Romans took pride in displaying their power and superiority. During public games and festivals, Roman soldiers and officers adorned themselves with the most impressive feathers to impress the people and create a visual spectacle that reflected the greatness of Rome. Feathers became a symbol not only of military power, but also of Rome's power as a dominant and culturally superior empire. These feathers also had personal meaning for many of those who wore them. For soldiers in particular, the type of feather they chose might symbolize a personal victory or a quality they wished to demonstrate. Perhaps a soldier who had fought in a campaign in Egypt chose the feathers of a local bird to symbolize his courage and success. These details, however subtle, added a touch of personality to the military uniform, making each helmet unique and representing the individual history and experiences of the wearer. As the Roman legions conquered new territories and acquired greater wealth, the demand for rare and exotic feathers increased, further fueling the idea that military status was deeply tied to the type and quality of feathers used. But as the Roman Empire expanded, new demands arose. During more strenuous campaigns, where functionality was essential, the allure of feathers often gave way to more practical solutions. But the importance of these adornments did not diminish. The real question was, what would be the next step for feathers on Roman helmets as the empire evolved? Which part has caught your attention the most so far? Leave it in the comments. We want to hear your thoughts. Feathers on Roman helmets were not just ornaments. They served multiple functions, both practical and symbolic, that helped define the position of soldiers within the military structure and directly influence their actions on the battlefield. Each feather, in addition to being a symbol of status or power, carried a load of strategic utility that could not be ignored. One of the most important functions of feathers was protection from the elements. Rome, with its vast territory and diverse climates, required adaptable solutions for its soldiers. Feathers helped protect Romans from the intense summer sunlight and also provided essential shade during long journeys. The simple addition of feathers to a helmet transformed this combat gear into an improvised sunscreen. During campaigns in hot territories such as Egypt or the Palestine region, where the sun was merciless, a feathered helmet could provide relief, protecting the soldier's eyes from the sun's rays that often made the battlefield even more barren and desolate. Furthermore, feathers played an important role in visual identification. On a tumultuous battlefield where chaos spread in all directions, visibility was a crucial issue. The ability to quickly distinguish a commander or soldier from a specific unit could mean the difference between victory and defeat. The Roman soldier, with his ornate helmet, had the advantage of being easily recognized from great distances. This was especially important in an era when armies numbered thousands of men and disorganization on the front lines could be fatal. By using feathers, the Romans not only ensured cohesion among their troops, but also conveyed a message of organization and discipline that intimidated their enemies. Even more intriguing was the psychological power of feathers. In times of war, outward appearance could be as important as fighting ability. Soldiers with lush feathers on their helmets not only demonstrated their position in the military hierarchy, but also created an imposing image, projecting a sense of strength and invincibility. For the Romans, battles were not just a clash of weapons, but also a visual spectacle, a test of psychological endurance. Imagine yourself standing in front of a row of centurions with peacock feathers on their helmets, standing in an imposing line, their almost mythical figures under the sunny sky. It was not just their strength that inspired respect, but the image of dominance, a reflection of Roman power that extended throughout the empire. This functioned both as a deterrent against enemies who might be intimidated by the imposing formation, and as an incentive for the soldiers themselves, who felt part of something large and indomitable. Feathers also played an essential role in military tactics. Roman generals, known for their cunning on the battlefield, used the visibility of feathers to coordinate and maneuver their troops more effectively. For example, a commander could signal formation changes or new orders simply by raising or adjusting the feather, a gesture that his subordinates would immediately recognize. Thus, the feathers served as a reference point, creating a visible line of command that ensured that soldiers followed their leaders' directions without confusion. This visibility was even more crucial during night battles or in places with poor visibility, such as dense forests or mountains, where sound and the movement of men were the only means of communication. In addition to their role on the battlefield, feathers also helped organize the legions. The Roman army was a highly organized and meticulously structured machine. Each soldier, depending on his rank or specialization, had a specific type of feather that differentiated him from the others. Senior officers, such as centurions, often wore larger, more imposing feathers, while lower-ranking soldiers opted for smaller, more discreet feathers. This system not only made it easier to identify leaders on the battlefield, but also aided in communication and command, especially during complex maneuvers where a rapid response was essential. A senior officer with a prominent feather could move quickly between the lines, ensuring that orders were transmitted clearly and without hesitation. This provided unique agility on the battlefield, where quick and effective communication could turn the tide in Rome's favor. No less important, feathers had a fundamental symbolic role. In a society like the Roman one, where the concept of honor and the preservation of social status were crucial, every detail of the military uniform had considerable weight. Feathers not only indicated the rank of a soldier, but also represented his relationship with the gods and the city of Rome. It was as if each feather carried with it a part of divine strength, testifying to the fact that this soldier was not just a mortal figure, but someone under the protection and favor of the gods. During ceremonies and celebrations where soldiers gathered in large numbers, feathers were a symbol of unity and dedication to Rome, a city that considered itself the heir of the world. Therefore, the plumed helmet was not only an instrument of war, but a symbol of a great civilization that extended from one empire to another with its own beliefs, values, and sense of invincibility. Feathers, in addition to their practical and symbolic function, also reveal a lot about the mentality of Rome. In an era when luxury and prestige were as important as fighting prowess, the addition of feathers to Roman helmets was a clear reflection of the Roman civilization's obsession with order, hierarchy, and image. This, in a sense, led the Romans to see their military campaigns as an extension of their own greatness. Each battle was not only a physical conflict, but also a field in which the image of Rome as an unbeatable power was consolidated. But as the Roman Empire advanced and the threats became more complex, new challenges emerged. Feathers, until then a crucial part of the Roman military, began to face their limitations. What would happen to them when new demands arose on the battlefield? Did you know, or was it a surprise? Right here, what surprised you the most? Decreasing use of feathers on Roman helmets. As the Roman Empire advanced into its final phase, changes on the battlefield and in Roman society also affected the most iconic details of its military attire. The use of feathers on helmets, a distinctive feature of Roman soldiers, began to fall out of use, not for lack of meaning or utility, but because of profound changes in combat conditions and the priorities of the army. The decline of feathers on Roman helmets was not abrupt, but rather reflected the progressive changes that accompanied the transformations of Rome itself. By the end of the 3rd century AD, the dynamics of the battlefield were changing rapidly. Invasions of barbarian peoples, new technologies of warfare, and even growing economic pressure meant that the Romans had to reconsider their methods and resources. Warfare, which had previously been characterized by discipline and training, now required faster and more flexible strategies. Feathers, although still visible for some time, became less practical as the structure of the Roman army reorganized to meet new challenges. The high cost of exotic bird feathers, such as peacocks and pheasants, became an obstacle. Scarce resources, the growing demand for new types of weapons and equipment, and the financial strain of constant military campaigns led to a revaluation of decorative elements. The Roman Empire, already burdened by internal and external crises, began to prioritize functionality over symbolism. What had once been a symbol of status and power now seemed unnecessary in a time of urgency and pragmatism. Resistance to the decline of feathers, however, did not disappear immediately. In some regions of the empire, especially the more traditional and aristocratic ones, the use of feathers continued to be a sign of distinction. But as time went by, even elite units began to adopt more practical equipment, with less ornamentation and greater attention to protection and efficiency. The helmet, once imposing and decorated, became more simplified and suitable for resisting attacks by new weapons, such as the battle axes of the Germanic invaders. Furthermore, the evolution of combat tactics also contributed to the reduction of sanctions. The battle formations of ancient Rome, which favored a line of disciplined and aligned soldiers, gave way to more dynamic strategies, where agility and mobility were essential. On a battlefield, where speed of reaction and flexibility of movement became vital, the ornaments that once served to distinguish leaders and important soldiers now seemed more of a liability than an asset. Feathers, which were once symbols of authority and identity, began to be seen as a distraction, something that could interfere with the agility of the soldiers. The advancement of weaponry also played a role. At the height of the empire, the Romans had to face increasingly powerful enemies, armed with more efficient combat technologies. Bows and arrows, long-range spears, and sharper swords began to gain importance on the battlefield. The usefulness of feathers in terms of identification at a distance declined considerably as weapons became more lethal and combat became more focused on direct confrontation. The Roman soldier needed protection, and the aesthetics of feathers did not offer the necessary defense against new types of attacks. However, the decline of feathers on Roman helmets was not a complete loss. Even when their use in the military became obsolete, feathers retained their value in other aspects of Roman society. They continued to be symbols of honor and prestige in other contexts. In official ceremonies, military parades and commemorative events, feathers were still used as part of ceremonial garments, a testimony to the greatness of an empire that, while in decline, never completely abandoned its glorious traditions. They were remembered not only as part of military history, but as an enduring symbol of ancient Rome. The end of the use of feathers on Roman helmets also marks a symbolic moment of transition. Rome was leaving behind a history of conquests and great symbols and was beginning to face the reality of a fragmented empire. The decline of feathers was just one of many signs that ancient Rome was transforming, facing internal challenges that would change the course of history. As the empire advanced in the 4th century and beyond, the needs of the army and society evolved, reflecting the wear and tear of an empire that, even in decline, maintained its identity of strength and influence. Thus, feathers, once the mark of Roman warriors, fell into disuse, but did not disappear from collective memory. They serve as a reminder of a time of glory, of soldiers who, as they marched in their massive armies, carried not only the strength of the empire, but also a symbol of its culture and status. Even though Roman helmets were no longer adorned with feathers, the greatness of the Roman Empire remained engraved in history, reminding the world of the power that for centuries dominated the West. Now, with the use of feathers on Roman helmets fading into oblivion, we need to reflect on how much of ancient Rome still lingers in our lives, and how the memory of these details is a fundamental part of our understanding of history. What else could have been left behind in the name of adaptation and survival? How have other military traditions transformed themselves in search of new solutions for new times? This is a story that still has a lot to teach us. Now the question is, have you ever stopped to think about how small changes can influence the history of such a great empire? Ancient Rome, with its size and complexity, left many legacies, but it also adapted to the needs of an ever-changing world, which makes us wonder what we can learn from this flexibility. And of course, it is worth remembering, the history of Rome is full of mysteries, secrets, and details that we often cannot even imagine. What else is hidden in the shadows of this mighty civilization? Only time will tell, but the important thing is that looking back, we see how little things can make a difference. So tell me, what do you think of this content? Did you already know these details about Roman helmets? Or is there another aspect of ancient Rome that you would like to know more about? Leave your opinion here in the comments and share this story with others who are interested in this fascinating past. Let's continue this conversation because history never ends. It continues with you, with every click and every comment.